Okay, so welcome. We're going to build a magical system for a mathematical object called the regular Hendecachoron, which is an unusual mathematical object. And we're going to show how the Hendecachoron and the formula of Abrahadabra, which is a well-known esoteric formula, can be mapped onto one another. And what this will let us do is explore the Hendecachoron using esoteric technique. And at the same time, this structure, the Hendecachoron, will then infuse the spell with a high level of integration and symmetry and power. So here are some links and references. So this is mathematical material. So if you are not a mathematician, you will probably find this a little bit difficult to penetrate. I am not a mathematician, but I have an ability to sit with this material, mostly because I have pattern recognition. And so I tend to sit with the material and maybe look up a couple terms until I have an idea of how I might start by making a map. And then what I tend to do is explore these types of patterns through esoteric technique. And I'm of the mind that actually this is as a legitimate a way of exploring math as any. And in a lot of cases, ancient math came from esoteric practices. So we'll talk a bit more about my theory of esoteric and philosophical practice as a way of exploring these kinds of complex abstract domains. And I have a feeling a lot more mathematicians have actually practiced something that enabled them to enter into a sort of intensive relationship with what they were exploring than we know of. I know there are some examples are famous, but there may be others. But here we have um, the regular Hendecachoron is the object under consideration. So this is otherwise known as the 11 cell, and you can find an article on it, Wikipedia. The 11 cell is a four-dimensional, self-intersecting, high symmetry object. And it's stitched together out of 11 hemicosahedra, which are four-dimensional self-intersecting what are called polytopes. So a polygon is a two-dimensional figure. A polygon is a three-dimensional figure, and a polytope is a four-dimensional figure. And then we have the two articles, Hyperseeing the Hendecachoron and the 10D jewel. These are both the meat of this article. This is how I basically pieced together everything I needed to do to make the map and to show how we could use occult science to activate this structure. And so I recommend you have a look at those and see if you can wrap your head around it. And if you can't, that's okay. We'll use our style of technique to explore it. So the Jaron's World article in Discovery magazine was when I first heard of the Hendecachoron in say 2012 or so when it was first published, and then it took me this long to do what I knew immediately was a significant connection. So I just sort of, a lot of the times I have things on the back burner. I say, that's a key, and one day I'll explore it. Well, now is the time when I'm exploring the Hendecachoron as a key to the dynamics of Abrahadabra. At any rate, that article triggered it. Um, and there's another article that you can give a light sort of overview of it. And then this one, which is behind a paywall, is, I believe, the first major article about the object by HSM Coxeter. It was discovered in 1977 by a different guy, but then Coxeter discovered it independently and wrote this article about it. So it's all this stuff starting with Jaron's world. That all was ultimately sparked by Coxeter's articles and Coxeter's work. Okay, so let's have a look. This is an example of two graphs, and what I think is fascinating about these graphs is that they show the connection between math, as we understand it, and the esoteric, because occultists, of course, love stars and polygons and basically graphs. And the truth is that Raman Lo, the 11th, or sorry, 12th century, late medieval polymath, who is at the heart of a great deal of occultism. He was an influence on Cornelius Agrippa and Giordano Bruno. He basically invented. He was the first person to basically think in terms of these graphs, and so he's the great great grandfather of graph theory and computer science, arguably. So here we have two graphs: a graph of the Hemicosahedron, which we'll be encountering, which shows 6 vertices and in every possible interaction with each other, right? That's what these lines and nodes are. So 6 vertices, and then all the possible combinatorial connections. And you can see that it forms like a Magen star, a Star of David, a 6-pointed star, a hexagram, which can also be mentally figured as an octahedron. And it's interesting that the hemiicosahedron as a 4-dimensional shape folds into the octahedron. This is going to be a key part of what we're doing here, how we're going to explore this whole hyperdimensional object using meditation and mantra and Kabbalah. So the graph of the Hendecachoron is especially interesting. And here I'm going to shut off my video now so you can just see the whole graph. And this is the Hendecachoron's graph, and it's 11 nodes in total interaction with each other. And this should be of interest to anyone involved in the Horus Mat Lodge or the 11-star rite, which is a international basically ritual, happens on new moons. And the idea is that there are 11 positions that have throne holders, people who are occupying those positions, and invoking God forms into those positions, and then they are knitting together to form this kind of matrix of energy. And so, as it turns out, the graph of the Hendecachoron, so there are 11 vertices in this 4th dimensional object, and here's all the possible combinations, all the connections between them, and this will be 66 possible connections, if I'm not mistaken. The sum of the numbers between 1 and 11. And so this is another reason why we're connecting this to Abrahadabra, which famously forms a triangle of 66 points. So this is just to set the stage. These are the objects we're looking at. This is why the mathematical domain and the occult domain are not as far off as people think. So I'm going to set up a model of magic first. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to show why it is that we what the link between philosophy and magic is, and why we can do this. Why can't I develop a ritual technique to take in this sort of mathematical object and to allow us to have that type of encounter with it? Why would I do that? Obviously, some people are going to be seeing this video might be purists and think this is a terrible thing to do and it's just muddying the waters. But no, this is another way of encountering the abstract, and it's an affective way, and it's an intensive way rather than an abstract way. And so the ritualist performs a kind of ceremony to bring themselves into a direct encounter with these objects. So, for example, maybe they're not even objects, we call them energies. So I'm thinking about Pythagoras and the famous tetractys of the Decad. To a person thinking abstractly, or to a person thinking like a philosopher, or like a mathematician rather, the tetractys of the Decad is it is the fourth triangular number. It is an object that we are thinking about. But to an esotericist, it is an experience. So the esotericist sees through the tetractys. The tetractys becomes the lens through which the esotericist views the world. What this ultimately tells us is that the earliest mathematicians were esotericists. So the mathematics came from these contemplations, and the tetractys wasn't just a neutral mathematical object, but it was a highly significant arcanum or energy or fountainhead. The Pythagoreans swore oaths on the tetractys. So what I'm trying to show here is the outsider mentality versus the insider mentality. And what the philosopher usually is thinking in terms of concepts. And what the esotericist is usually doing is thinking in terms of experiences and feelings. And so there is a threshold across which this translates. And so what I'm doing here ultimately is showing these thresholds. And in sociology, the insider knowledge is called emic knowledge. So I would say that the occult practitioner doing a meditative or ritualistic exploration of, we'll say, spirits or energies or so on, is having an intensive or intrinsic participatory experiential encounter with these patterns, whereas the philosopher thinking about it is having outsider experience, an extensive, an extrinsic, a conceptual encounter with these energies. And what I'm trying to say here is that these are flip sides of a single continuum, and we actually want them both, because what happens is the insider experiences a type of intuitive knowledge, so say the thinking with the heart, and then the outsider is thinking with the head, and between the two there's this sort of there's this circuit that occurs, and we want both of these to be active. So essentially the magician becomes a philosopher, the magician becomes a philosopher, going inside and outside of the structures and the experiences, and being able to translate across them, because every rich magical system results in a philosophy, and every philosophy has the potential to be realized as a set of practices that take it out of the head and put it into the heart. And you bring those two things together and you have a very good kind of synergy. And then, so that's the sociological terms, emic and etic. There's also the terms enic and exic, which imply the thresholds, right? So there's these two domains, the intrinsic and the extrinsic, and then there's the threshold between the intrinsic and the extrinsic. So there's the threshold where you're crossing from insider knowledge to outsider knowledge, and there's also the threshold where you're crossing from outsider knowledge extrinsic knowledge to insider knowledge. So basically, you've got philosophy and magic, and the line between philosophy and magic, and the line between magic and philosophy. Those four combinations are basically if you want, the solstices and equinoxes of the the magico-philosophical union, the magical philosophical circuit. And what, in a way, I'm doing here is I'm basically talking philosophy. I'm speaking in extrinsic terms, conceptual terms, but I'm leading into esoteric experiences. So I'm using the enic mode, right? So I'm entering into, so I'm taking this mathematical object that has been explored and developed without any mystical or experiential, we'll say, some would say baggage, but this is the stuff. This is the content. So this has been presented to us as pure math, and we are going to take it into an experiential dimension, and we're going to marry consciousness to it. So this is essentially what this is, an enic line. We're going to take an enic line, and right, and so just like there is an intrinsic and an extrinsic treatment of philosophy. Philosophy intrinsically is magic and extrinsically is philosophy. This shows us something very interesting, is that there are open systems and closed systems, and there are magics that are more related to dramatizing, intensivizing an open system, and magics that are more interested in intensivizing a closed system. And the difference is the open system will be geography, ancestry, spirits, and the field that the senses pertains to, right? So we learn about the world, the extended world that we're in through our senses, and from a philosophical point of view, it's a bit like phenomenology. You're just exploring the world as it is given, and you're certainly not putting any laws on top of it. You're just exploring it. But then when it comes to a esoteric approach, this is like witchcraft and sorcery. This is like folk magic. And then you have closed systems, and closed systems are abstract systems, mathematical systems. So these develop later, right? The open system is the primary field, and then the closed systems are distilled out of it. So the tetractys of the decad, which I mentioned, Pythagoras, and other closed systems tend to, like geometry, right? Sacred geometry. It's closed systems. So this type of magic is more interested, less in spirits and ancestors and so forth, but in energies and sometimes spirits in the sense of abstract beings. So demons and angels, or angels in particular, are often seen as sort of representing an abstract position in a code, the great plan, the logos, right? And so the closed system magic has this idea of a logos in there, and it's usually used more towards what we call high magic. And the thing is, just like emic and etic, we think of them in their pure sense, but more often than not, the thresholds are the real interesting place. Well, the same is true, even more so probably, in this model of open system magic and closed system magic. So natural versus high magic, which is that the thresholds are more important than the pure systems. I mean, sure, there are people who absolutely purely are only about the we'll say folk magic, And yet there is something, I mean, the question is, well, where does this math exist outside of the world? If an open system magician says that it can either will deny the existence of math altogether, or say that it's some feature in the world that human beings have a tendency to imagine exists outside of it. But this is in a way, I guess what I'm saying is that most magics are of type 3 and 4. You can see I have a fourfold typology. So type 1 is open natural magic, type 2 is closed abstract magic, but type 3 is open system being translated into a closed system. So this is where you get like the laws, the people imposing a kind of geometric set of laws onto the world and architecture onto the world. So often, so this can actually be materialist science, or it can also be um, an example of theology. And basically, what's happening is the natural systems, and this we see this in Plato. The natural systems are subordinated abstraction, and so it's believed that the logos or the code is the primary reality, and that the natural world is a sort of flawed space that needs to be corrected by the code, or dominated by the code. And so in this concept, I would say materialism, but also Solomonic magic of the Lesser Key of Solomon, uh, which is like 19th century grimoire, and that way of treating spirits, imprisoning them in a triangle, ordering them to do things, using the high magic to essentially enclose and pinion these uh, these types of spirits within a matrix or grid. And of course, Enochian, as practiced by John Dee, also has this. It's very, very abstract, very built on codes, and it makes language the primary reality. And then finally, we have the type 4, which I have an affinity for, which is closed systems to open. So this is the threshold where codes and geometries are given back to the natural world. So the closest thing I can think of is Taoism, or forms of perhaps Kashmir Shaivism, where there's a return to this natural plenum, even after a process of abstraction. So everything I'm doing is in the spirit of type 4. So I would said that I'm doing an enic, so I'm taking the Hendecachoron and I'm going to turn it into an occult system. But my approach is type 4. So these are, we can call these the metamagical types, and it's a type 4 approach where I am basically, at the end of the day, I don't want to overpower the natural world with code. I want to recognize that code is something that humans distill out of experience and then experience variations and hybridities of the code and the natural world. But ultimately type 4 becomes a kind of fully realized type 1. And so I think type 3 and type 4 are going to be way more common than type 1 or in type 2, because it's hard to imagine uh, a pure open magic that doesn't even recognize closed systems, and it's hard to imagine a pure closed magic that doesn't even recognize open systems. So type 3 and type 4, and I prefer type 4 because type 3 puts the cart before the horse, and type 4 basically allows abstraction to be a phenomenon within the open field. Okay. Excuse me. All right. So if you sat through this already, you're wondering, okay, when are we going to get to the Abrahadabra material? And I'm going to do a bit more of this philosophy before we get there. So bear with me because I think it's important to explain the why I'm doing this. Right. So basically, at the end of the day, four types of magic, four modalities. So you end up with a an emic, etic, enic, and exic way of mode of treating all four of these. And I've just got some examples here. So type one would be like sorcery and witchcraft in the emic sense. So when you're as the practitioner, thinking through the heart, sorcery and witchcraft. But from a netic point of view, it would be more like phenomenology, existentialism, ecology. And an exic example would be a sorcerer studying philosophy and starting to think about from that outsider point of view what these experiences are. So this is the head of the heart moving towards the head. And then the other side of it would be the head moving towards the heart. So this often happens. You get someone involved in phenomenology or some kind of philosophy that has a real open system approach, and then they'll start to explore exercises that will allow them to have a heart experience of what they know to be the case intellectually. And so I'm not going to do the anic in every case here because it's usually just the efforts of the emic moving towards the exic or the emic moving toward the etic or the etic moving towards the um, the enic the emic. So basically, the heart moving to the head or the head moving to the heart. So here's the type two. Remember, type two is pure code. So what is a type two practitioner? Is someone who is full on into sacred geometry, believes that the world is essentially a number code, um, probably like a sound wave of some sort. And we have plenty of examples of that. And then the etic side of this is just a mathematician, mathematician, geometry, cryptography. So they're not interested in what the relationship of this is to the changing world. They're just interested in the pure math. So we can imagine, of course, a sacred geometrician, someone who's really into sacred geometry, studying pure math, and eventually being able to communicate without the mystical apparatus associated with it. And similarly, we can definitely imagine mathematicians with a private practice that takes them to the places they need to go to get those ideas. And I'm thinking, of people like Pythagoras or Cantor, I believe, was highly religious in his study of the orders of infinity. So often there is a spiritual life that is being um, not talked about by professional ethic philosophers. Remember that math is part of philosophy, right? Math is a branch of philosophy, as is phenomenology, as are others. So this is how I understand it. I'm not treating math as a science. I'm trying treating it as the the part of philosophy that is logic, the logic, pure and simple. Type three, we have the emic approaches in type three, where you're using the code to dominate the world, our key of Solomon and the D material, and the etic would be materialism, engineering, and dialectic. Both, I would say, both the materialist dialectic of Marx and the spiritual dialectic of Hegel. And finally, type four, the emic modes of type 4 seem to me like Taoism or Tantra, and the etic modes seem like transcendental empiricism. So this is Deleuze, Deleuze and Guattari, and also ecology. And I'm thinking of David Abram. And David Abram could be a type 1 or a type 4. To me, type 4 and 1 blend together, and type 2 and 3 blend together. So again, this isn't meant to be like a exhaustive, absolute code of everything, like a 17th century philosopher might come up with. But this is a system, it's a combinatorial system for understanding the dynamics of the different types of magic and how they go from the intrinsic to the extrinsic. So if you sat through all of this, then you understand what I'm essentially about. I think that there's these different types of magic and they translate into and out of philosophy. And I think that we want them all to be working. But I'm a type 4 for sure. And okay, so what am I doing here with the Hendecachoron? We are providing a magical frame for experiencing the Hendecachoron. So unlike math papers, which we've all seen, I am showing a way of having a occult or esoteric experience with this object. So this is like a type 4 enigmatical action. I think I said that already. And we're going to develop a ritual framework so that we can basically get inside it and know it. Not with our brains, but with our hearts. And, you can compare the extrinsic way of looking at it to seeing, considering, understanding the mathematics, as opposed to becoming, seeing through, experiencing, feeling the Hendecachoron. We are going to become the Hendecachoron. So there are 11 thrones, and 11 thrones are stations, and they're connected to the Kabbalistic tree of life. So you can see this diagram of the Kabbalistic tree of life, and the symbols I've used are for Kether is the eightfold wheel, for Chokmah is the lemniscate, the infinity sign, for Bina is the black egg, for Dath is Saturn, for Chesed is Jupiter, for Geburah is Mars, Tippereth is the sun, Netzach is Venus, Hod is Mercury, Yesod is the moon, and Malkuth is the cross of the elements. And I've got the number 8 here, and I don't know why. It's just, this was on my slide. It's like a typo that I didn't catch. All right, but these are the keys. So here are the 11 thrones. We're going to build a seal for each of the thrones. So the 11 thrones are also connected to the 11 letters of the word Abrahadabra. Abrahadabra is often formed as a triangle. This is the generative mode of forming Abrahadabra. Let's get my face back up here. And you can see it's A, B, ABR, all the way down till the full Abrahadabra is produced in 11 stages. And then the other mode is 6 abrahadabras will fit here. So in this 66-point triangular grid, I have fit 6 abrahadabras back to back. And this is actually more like what is going on with the Hendecachoron. Because the Hendecachoron can be imagined as this structure of six abrahadabras interwoven in this kind of hyperdimensional jewel. There's 11 jewel faces that form into this one hyperjewel, and there are six concurrent abrahadabras that are running through all the points, and they're all interwoven and interconnected, as we'll see. It sounds really super and abstract. If the beauty of this approach is if you perform the magic and you practice this, you will get to understand it completely. You don't have to be a mathematician to understand this. But if you're not a mathematician, we need an approach in. Okay, the hemicosahedron is the building block, and it's a four-dimensional object, which is half an icosahedron, except the outside edges connect. So this sounds weird, but it's a bit like the Mobius strip. The Mobius strip folds over into so both the faces. There's really one side because there's this kind of twist in a fourth or in a higher dimension, and for the hemicosahedron, it's assumed that there is a twist that allows the sides of it, the edges, to connect. And we'll see this in a bit. Even if you don't understand this, you will eventually through the practice. And so there are basically 6 vertices and 10 triangles. And the whole thing will fold up and into an octahedron. So if you can imagine yourself in an octahedron, you have the basic key to the hemicosahedron, and therefore to the Hendecachoron. So here is a schematic diagram of this object, and I'm going to tend towards the style of the one on the left, and you can see the numbers. These are the vertices, and you can see that we've got 1, 2, and 3 in the middle, and then 4 is both at the top and at the bottom. And this is because 4 is simultaneously present to both. It's not 2 4s. This is the same 4. This is 0.4. So this is the wraparound effect. It's half an icosahedron, which is then folded into the 4th dimension. And the 5s, see here? There's 1 5 that is in 2 places, and 1 6 that is in 2 places. And so this may beggar the imagination, but don't worry about it. Think instead like this. We're getting 10 triangles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's all that's important, these triangles. And I'll show you how this works shortly. We're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, here it is. So here is my translation of this. So I'm going to go back. Here's my translation of this. What I have done is I've taken the directions north, south, east, west, up, and down, the 6 directions, and I have assigned them to these points. So these are the vertices, and you can see that north is in 2 positions, down is in 2 positions, up is in 2 positions, but really there's only one north and one down, and similarly east, west, and south. So this actually is going to be an icosahedron. So if you have a ritual space where you have north, south, east, west, up, and down, you can mentally see what's in those spaces. That'll be actually very helpful because you just can connect them, right? Connect the east to the north and south and to the west, and you have like a little square base, and then above, and you draw the lines up from the 4 directions, and you will get a pyramid, and then draw the lines down towards a space below, and you will get the octahedron. So you're in an octahedron already if you have a magic circle. And so it turns out that there will be 10 triangles made of 3 of these positions that will be gates. So inside of the octahedron, there are 10 triangular gates, and I have numbered them. So they're inside the triangle. So triangle 1, triangle 2, triangle 3, triangle 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This isn't entirely arbitrary, but is based on making it aesthetic. So I could have set it up different, but I chose this. And so the gates then become numberable, and they are northeast west. So if you imagine you're in the in this magic circle, so connecting the line from the north to the east to the west, it creates a triangle that's on the horizontal plane. And east, west, south creates the opposite triangle, actually. So east, west, south plus northeast, west creates a square in the horizontal plane. And then south down north and south north up. Take some time to just try to picture this. South down north is a triangle leading from the south to the nadir and back up to the north. So it is a vertical slice of the plane, and so south north up is its partner. So it's again a square, but this time 90 degrees perpendicular to the first square. And then finally, and it's running on the north-south axis. And then number 5 is up, east, down, and up, down, west. And that's also going to be the same kind of square, except it's running on the east-west axis. So we've basically got the X, Y, Z axes have been picked up by these first 6 gates. Now, the last 4 are interesting because there would be 14 if you were to use all of the triangles that you could possibly derive from the octahedron. There would be actually 14 of them, but there's 4 that we're not using, which is actually going to be kind of interesting. So we've got one at up northeast and west up south. So up northeast is going to be the outside of the octahedron and forming a triangle to the northeast. And west up south is again on the upper face of the octahedron, but just directly across to the southwest. But what's interesting is that the upper southeast and the upper northwest do not have triangular gates because we don't need them. By the time we have all 10 of these, those other 4 are just given. So you're probably wondering, what the heck? This will make total sense. But just to finish with the 9 and 10, you've got down west north and down east south. Same idea, except just the northeast, the northwest and southeast axes. So they are triangles that are the lower faces. So basically, now we have this hemicosahedron that's been folded into an octahedron, and then positioned in relation to the 4 directions. Okay. And here's what all the slices look like. These are the octahedral gates, the 10 octahedral gates. So I'm going to turn this picture off here. Gates of the octahedron. So this diagram here in the middle is a picture of the graph. It's the same graph we looked at before, but if you imagine this rectangular portion as the base, and then lines going up like this to the zenith, and lines coming down to the nadir, and then a line through the middle, and then from above and below, and then north, south, and east, west. So this is the octahedron, which is the graph of the hemicosahedron. And there's a little bit of an explanation why not every possible triangle is covered, and which is like, if you want to make a tetrahedron, you need 3 triangles. It's got 4 triangles in it, but you just basically need to assemble 3 triangles, and then you get the 4th for free. So but if you only have 2 and you put them together, they their angles are not fixed. So you're basically, three triangles are enough to make the fourth triangle necessary and fixed. So if you put three equilateral triangles together, you will get a tetrahedron. Because you get that fourth face for free. Well, that is exactly what's happening with the triangles in the octahedron. So the hemicosahedron gives us all of the triangles that we absolutely need, and then the other four we get as a bonus. We just get them for free. So that's interesting. So these triangles are the gates. Remember, this object, the full object is 11 of these hemicosahedra stitched together. So you can imagine 11 mages, each of whom it has a magic circle, which is which is an octahedron. But 10 of the triangles within each of their octahedrons is a gate to one specific other mage. This is really what's going to happen, is this integration will connect all 11 of these independent mages into one super integrated magical energy. And I just want to look at what the gates are here. So you can see in the diagram, you've got the way I do it is just up and down, north, south, east, and west. So here is the gate 1 and gate 2 form the horizontal plane. Gate 3 and gate 4 form the vertical plane, the vertical north-south plane, and then 5 and 6 form the vertical east-west plane. So that's these three squares that are essentially connected, intersecting one another. And then, as I was talking about, up northeast, up west, south, down southwest, north down west, and south down east. And if you can mentally construct this, it should become clear. It might take some work, but this is the groundwork that's needed to get to the place where we know enough to actually enter into the Hendecachoron and integrate it into our practice. So the Hendecachoron is a high symmetry, four-dimensional abstract object in which 11 hemicosahedra knit together until they close up. All of their points and lines are satisfied, and there's no more needed. It is self-dual, which means that if you connect the faces, if you draw points in the center of each face, there's 55 faces, and if you put a point in the center of each one and then draw lines connecting all those points, you will produce another hemicosahedron. It is self-producing infinitely. And the only other case in terms of the platonic solids that we have is the tetrahedron does this. The tetrahedron has a tetrahedron within it. It's self-dual. But all the others have a different object in them. For example, inside of an octahedron is a cube, inside of a dodecahedron is an icosahedron, and so forth. But the tetrahedron is self-dual, so it's pure, and that's one of the reasons it's assigned to fire by Plato in the Timaeus. But the Hendecachoron is self-dual, so it has a powerful purity. Symmetry group 660 means that the sum total of all rotations and reflections of this object, there are a total of 660 possible configurations. And this is very interesting to me because it certainly connects to Abrahadabra. Remember I said Abrahadabra has 11, an Abrahadabra triangle has 11 face back up. It has a 66 points in it. Well, if you were to make a full star, okay, I got my weird filter. All right, this is my Abrahadabra star, and each one of these has a full Abrahadabra. You can't really see it there, but it's basically a full Abrahadabra triangle. And then I've built a hexagram out of it. And where the A's are, I have initiated new Abrahadabras. So the alephs in this form this kind of spider web. So it's a very interesting kind of talisman to construct, and it shows a full expression of Abrahadabra and Abrahadabra triangles as a Magin star. And there are a total of 661 points. So if you knock the middle out, if you consider the middle as a whole, then there's 660. So what we have here is a talisman that has quite a lot of resonance with this symmetry, the Hendecachoron. This was quite surprising. When I went into and explored the Hendecachoron, I kind of felt that this is stuff I already knew. I thought it would be really difficult, but it's energetically very, very, very familiar. And I think it has to do with the fact that Abrahadabra can be developed into this star. Oh yeah, so the original discoverer was this guy Branko Grunbaum, and then it was independently discovered by HSM Coxeter. So 77 and 84 are the key years in the early stages of this. So I was 1 year old when this was discovered. It's a powerful object. Okay, and here's where we get into the meat of it. So here are 11 Hemicosahedron, and you can see they're numbered. So there's 11 points. So what the first one is T. Actually, the best way to read it is from across, right? This is the linear order. T, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is how the mathematicians set it all up, okay? I'm going to make some changes because we're esotericists. I'm not going to change their logic, but I'm going to just change the symbols they use and the color code because the colors are arbitrary. They're just to show us. But what you have here is it's important to get you. If you build a set of these, you will start to understand the logic. It will become clear. But this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is in linear order. The sequence, and you see this is this north position when I put the directions onto it, and so 0 is in these 2 points. 1 is in these 2 points. Let's find another example of T in a different position. T is here, right? And you'll see the next one is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. So there's a full linear series in order here. And every time we find a T, it's the start of a linear series, right? So this one will be T, and then 0, 1. And so actually it makes total sense. They're interleaved, but they're not scrambled or random. Whereas so there's 6 T's. So there's actually 6 11-unit series that are interlaced through all of this. And of course we have, so the symmetry group. So there's going to be 10 orientations based on these faces, I believe. And so that's maybe where the symmetry group comes. But basically there are 66 independent positions. Even though some of them are doubled, there are 66 positions here. So this is starting to look an awful lot like the 6 Abrahadabras in the Abrahadabra triangle. And then finally, the question of the colors. The colors show how we stitch this together. All right. So if we take this first one, this is actually red. So you'll see that there's no red triangle here because it is the red hemicosahedron. And every other one of the hemicosahedra have one facet that connects to this one. So let's just follow this through a bit. Okay, let's take the yellow triangle, right? And so this yellow triangle is 6T0, all right? And it's going to connect to the yellow. It's the red connecting to the yellow, and it comes out, it connects to this triangle, which is 6T0. So these are a gate. This is the gate from the yellow into the red, and this is the gate from the red into the yellow. This is the gate from the yellow into the pink, and if I find the pink one, it's over here. And I look, oh, okay. And this is T02, right? And I look over here, oh, okay. And this is the pink hemicosahedron, and T02 is the configuration of this gate. So this is how the whole thing stitches together. And it's really quite brilliant because there's nothing left over and there's nothing insufficient. So this is a brilliantly integrated object, except that it's almost impossible to think about how it would look unless you go in and experience it. It's very hard to visualize. But as esotericists, we can build that up through astral journey, right? And so if you imagine these 11 mages, each one of them has a seal. So each one of these thrones, okay, there's a crazy sound going on inside. I'll just ignore it for now. Each one of these thrones, there's one occultist sitting on it with their specific seal, which then connects them to all of the others through these series of gates. And the whole thing is fully integrated. Okay. What is that sound? Sounds like someone scraping a giant pipe across the ground. You probably have sound filters so you guys can hear it. It's driving me nuts. I live in Hong Kong, so it's pretty loud. All right. So this is how the mathematician's set up. I'm going to make some changes. First of all, I'm going to take the letters T0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm going to, I don't need that. That's very mathematician-y, but I'm going to assign that to Abrahadabra. So T is A-B-R-A-H-A-D, A-B-R-A. Here it is in Hebrew. I know this is laid out from left to right, which is not how you would write Hebrew, but this is just to show. And I've numbered the letters because what's going to happen is because there's some of the similar letters, right? Aleph appears 5 times. Well, there's actually 5 different alephs. So there's the first aleph, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And even though when we have our mantra, so we're going to have mantras that will open all the gates. We won't say the number, but it's good to know which of them we're talking about, right? So like we may have an ABA gate, but the the alephs will be representative of different cases in the Abrahadabra. Okay, and down here we've got the signs for the Sephirot. Oh, I'm going to go back here. So Kether, Chokmah, Bina, Dath, Chesed, Geburah, Tifereth, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malkuth. Why did I choose to put Saturn in Dath? Just because I want to preserve the Magin star in the center of the tree. Okay, and so here's what my version looks like. And I've got the Hebrew letters, and you can see the Kether seal has the letters assigned to the points. So, for example, this gate here, which is going to go into Jupiter, right? So it's going to go into here. It's got Aleph, Aleph, Bet. And then you go to the Jupiter, and you can see that the gate leading to Kether is Aleph, Aleph, Bet. So what you would do is you would imagine yourself within the octahedron, and remember you can call up so for example, this gate leading to Jupiter is gate 7. Let's have a look here. Oh, I've got a little sidebar. So gate 7 is up northeast, and so I am inside of my octahedron, and I'm picturing the triangle of up north and east. So that's kind of that's one of the faces of the octahedron, and then I have Hebrew letters now I can assign to it, and it will be Aleph, Aleph, Bet, Aleph. So I could intone that in order to open the gate and pass between the Kether gate, the Kether throne, and the Chesed throne. So I can pass between, using this system, any throne and any other throne. And so it won't be in this video, but I think later I will develop a meditation where we go through the entire Hendecachoron and link up all the thrones. But the key is using these mantras, these 3-letter mantras that are drawn from the fact that Abrahadabra has been totally mapped onto this. So remember, we were going so remember the North series, right? So this is Aleph, Bet, Resh, Aleph, Hey, Aleph, Daleth, Aleph, Beth, Resh, Aleph. So this one's Abrahadabra. And of course, you can take any one of these. And if you knew where the T was, you know where to start. It's not obvious from these seals, but don't worry, I will provide much more detailed seals shortly. So okay, where's another one? Right here. Okay, okay. So here's an Aleph. So this is in the Chesed throne, and this position here, uh, which is going to be, I think it's down, and you can see it's the same here, right? It's an Aleph because it's the same position. So this is A B R A H A D A B R A. And actually, similarly over here, it's the same thing. So A B R, because these 2 points are the same. So Abrahadabra has an independent series right up here and right down here. So you can follow that through if you want. You won't understand this unless you make these yourself. And let me show you what they look like. Here's the key, by the way. Here are all of the seals. Here is the seal of the first throne. And there are 10 gates. And you can see all of the mantras for all of the gates. So the northeast west gate, gate 1, is going to be Aleph, Bet, and Aleph, and this is the second Aleph to appear in Abrahadabra. So intoning this will allow you to pass from Kether into the Saturn throne, from the Kether throne to the Saturn throne. The second one will allow you to pass from the Kether throne into the Mars throne using the mantra Bet Aleph, Bet Aleph Bet. And of course, this is going to be the same mantra that you would use from the Mars throne to go back to the Kether throne. So it would appear in a different place in the octahedron. But so for example, gate 1 will lead into gate 3. So the gate 1 here, northeast west, will always lead to south down west. So that's this one here. So this is going to go into Saturn and the south down west triangle. And these are fixed, by the way. So the mantra will always be exactly the same in both thrones, but the first will be paired with the third, the second with the sixth, the third again with the first, you can see. So the symmetry is all starting to come up. If you make these, you will understand it. It sounds like this elaborate, crazy thing, but as soon as you make a set of these seals, you will absolutely understand it. And once we start to meditate on it, we will be able to travel through the Hendecachoron, and it will be absolutely crystal clear, which is the beauty of magic, isn't it? So here is the seal of the gate of Chokhmah. And I don't think I have to explain all this because it's all laid out. The only thing that I would add to this is you notice that in the Kether gate, Kether gate, I said the 10 gates of Kether. And then the Chokhmah, I said the 9 gates of Chokhmah. That's because technically number 4 here, right? Gate 4 goes to Kether. Gate 4 from Chokhmah goes to Kether. So this mantra is going to be south, north, up. So it's going to be Resh, Bet, Bet. And this will so this gate has already been, this is a gate of Kether, right? So they're the gates are not there's only one gate. So whichever it appears in, whichever throne it appears in first, is the throne it's in. So Kether has 10 gates, and Malkuth has no gates, because by the time we get to Malkuth, all the gates have already been opened. So here's the seal of the second throne. This is a bet here. This is the second bet, right? Abrahadabra. Okay, and so that's the map of Chokhmah, and this is Bina. And you can see now 2 have been, so there's 8 gates of Bina. So this is going to basically be 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, which is 55 gates in total, which is the mystical number of Malkuth. And 5 and 5 are the 2 Hays and Tetragrammaton, if you want. But basically, yeah, so here is the seal of the second throne, the seal of third throne. Sorry, here's the seal of the fourth throne. Yeah. And I've done my very best to make sure there's no typos. I put a lot of work into this. This video has taken me a lot of time to set up. But I'm pretty sure there's no typos in this. If there is, it'll be on the order of maybe mislabeling one of the, is this the 5th version? Is this the 5th Aleph or the, and so I'm sure those, if there are, they'll be ironed out. But the point is, you would never, so this 5th Aleph. So for example, here, this gate here, which is a gate 4 leading to Bina from Dath, and this would be south, north, up. And so it's Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. So that's what it would be. You wouldn't necessarily have to accommodate the fact that this is the second Aleph and this is the third Aleph. But that's just there so that we gain our understanding. And here we have the Chesed seal, 6 gates of Chesed, 6 gates of Geburah, 6 gates of Tiphareth. Each one is different, but they're all uniquely locked together. And 3 gates. Did I say 6? I said 6 of Chesed, and then I said 6 of Geburah. There's 5 of Geburah, 4 of Tiphareth, 3 of Netzach, 2 of Hod, right? Because all the others have been developed. So the only new ones in Hod are gate 9 and gate 10. So going from Hod into Malkuth and Hod into Yesod. And then there's 1 gate in Yesod, which goes to Malkuth. But of course, you can get to every throne from every throne if you know the seals, and it completely integrates the energy of all the thrones. And here's the final throne. This is Malkuth. So this should be of interest to people in the HML who want to perhaps knit together all of the thrones in the 11-star ritual, which is the graph of the Hendecachoron, and I'll finish with the references. Here are all the references again, bookending it from beginning and end. If you've sat through this, I know you're committed, because this is as simple as I could make it, but it is not a simple topic. But we can use this. There we go. So we can use this technique with these three syllable mantras that will allow us to move between all the thrones, and then bring the whole thing into this incredible symmetrical object in 4 dimensions that, according to Jaron Lanier, is only ultimately no, it's not Jaron Lanier, sorry, it's Sequin in the 10-dimensional jewel. He says that even though it's a 4-dimensional object, it's only in 10th dimensional space that it is fully unfurled, and that's when all 660 of its rotations and reflections are essentially seen as part of one ginormous hyperdimensional object. So in 10th dimensional space, he says it's a jewel, and I would tend to agree with him. And I would suggest that using this won't be just bringing us into 4-dimensional space. It'll actually lead us to 10th dimensional understanding. So that's why this is so incredibly interesting and important. And remember that this is an offering this is a type 4 magical practice. So this is an offering of code to the great plenum. So this is not an attempt to lock everything down in this like it was a law, but rather to take this logic and this energy mesh and to return it to the ineffable. And so I put that stuff at the beginning. I know it probably filtered a lot of tourists out, but I don't think there's any tourists left. So whoever sat through this is working this stuff out. You're here because you want to understand this magic, and so this is a closed system magic, but it's being offered to the open system, and this is being translated from an etic understanding, outsider knowledge, into a format that people who want to ritualize it and experience it as a domain where we can flesh it out with symbol and vision and so forth. This is being provided for them, because these Hebrew letters, of course, are going to bring with them tarot symbolism and so forth. So so I'm providing this so that an emic practice can be experienced. So I think that this is the end of the video. So thank you for watching. Look at the articles, read them if you can. You'll find them a lot easier to understand after you do the practice, unless you're a mathematician, in which case I'm sure you'll be just breezing through it all. But why would you even be interested in what we esotericists want to do with such a pattern, right? Because you can grok this stuff. I can't grok it without going inside of it, which is why I use these methodologies, because it marries the math with my inner experience, and then I become the math. And so I feel that is the goal here, is to become the hemicosahedron, to modulate our auric nimbus such that it can take this shape, and that we can have these experiences and this type of integration. So Abrahadabra, very powerful, very connected. The 11 thrones of the 11th star and the regular Hendecachoron. And that is a wrap.